Welcome to Sports Talk with Steve Jones, the daily talk show with the voice of Penn State football and men's basketball. You never know what special guest may stop on by any given day. Now here's the man of the hour, Mr. Steve Jones.
All right, great to have you with us. Did you steal that? Buy it? Is that a knockoff?
No, not a knockoff.
You bought that.
The camera didn't want to see it for a short time there. I did buy this. Yes, I did.
That's rare. Usually you're a 5-finger discount guy. All right.
And then I pay a fine and end up paying for it anyway.
What are you talking about pay a fine? If it's less than whatever amount, I'm just kidding. All right. So, wrestling wins the Big Ten title. They got, 1.5 billion points or something like that.
Pretty close.
Big number. And then plenty of champions. Aaron Brooks, Greg Kirkfleet. Braden Davis, great win for him at 125 yesterday. Levi Haynes and Mitchell Messenbrink. Wow. And then Bo Bartlett has some incentive now going into the Nationals to win that title at 141.
And Messenbrink, I thought was extremely impressive in the final there. Fell down 9-2, came back.
He just keeps on.
He's
coming all the time. I asked Cale Sanderson about that. I said, is there any point where you want him to channel that energy? And he said, no.
No, and
he says there are other people that try in the wrestling room that try to duplicate what he does. He says, and we're like, hey, hold on. I said, those are the ones you want to channel? He goes, yes. He says, but not him.
Yeah, and it's strange to say it because obviously the team he's on, I feel like he flies under the radar a little bit. He's undefeated.
He flies.
Yeah.
I mean, on this team.
Because of what you have in front of him, absolutely.
On this team, you're going to have that. I mean, it's just.
Yeah.
It's an all-star lineup.
Absolutely.
So, there's going to be somebody that may not get as much publicity, but But now they're lined up to go to Kansas City. I'm sure it's. Did they announce the at-larges afterward?
I didn't see them if they did.
Okay, so we're just waiting on the Carter Storaci at-large, but Penn State should have 10 when it's all said and done, and as they go after another national title. Again, a guy I give a lot of credit to is. Look, I know for Aaron Brooks, it got to a point where cutting to 184 is tough. So now at 197, it's easier for him. But you still are wrestling all new people. And he's actually adjusted his style a little bit because of it. And that tells you everything about the guy. The guy is not stubborn about what he's doing out there. In other words, okay, I've got to do a couple of different things at this weight that maybe I wasn't doing before. And he does it because he wants to win. And I give him a lot of credit for that. Russell Wilson is signed with the Steelers, so $1.3 million deal. Remember, the Broncos still owe him $37 million, so this is not, he is not taking a vow of poverty here to do this.
It's kind of a prove-it deal for him, too, I think, which is good for both sides.
Look, if it doesn't go well, then fine. It's $1.3 million, right? And you've got Kenny Pickett.
Exactly.
Okay. And for Russell Wilson, you kind of feel like this is the one where he's got to do something with it. Because the Denver thing, without question, didn't even remotely go well. So the Broncos owe him $39 million for the upcoming year. That's guaranteed. There's some offsets in there and so forth. His deal with the Steelers is $1.21 million. Okay, that's fine. So Denver is left paying $37.79 million. And this is one of those, he can come in, he can compete with Kenny Pickett, and you can see where he fits in. Now, what this does for Mason Rudolph, that's to me, that's more the domino of this. What does it mean for Mason Rudolph? No, look, Rudolph's not an all-star. He did a good job down the stretch last year.
Though.
Let's give credit where credit's due, and you go from there. Okay, so, look, if he goes in there, plays better. Look, number one. What made Russell Wilson effective when he was with Seattle? It was always his ability to move.
His movement, yeah.
I felt his movement at Denver suddenly seemed so limited.
Yeah.
And this is something where let's give John Schneider and Seattle and Pete Carroll, Pete Carroll's not the coach now, but credit for looking at him and saying, you know what? This is always a tough thing to do. And this is where the business of it comes in. You hate to look at people as having shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
But this is professional football.
Yeah.
And the Patriots, as a franchise, perfected what is your shelf life. All right. Darrelle Revis. He's doing great. Okay. Right. Even with Tom Brady. Yes, Brady won a Super Bowl after he left the Patriots. But the year after, he was very good, not great.
His final year in New England, he was not great.
Right. And people don't realize you could see the fall off the second year at Tampa. You could see it.
Yeah.
Right? I remember that. Was it a playoff game with the Rams?
Mm-hmm.
Right? He couldn't generate anything.
No, they almost won the games. They came back, but he was off. He was bad for 3 quarters.
Right, and then he was, he threw a ton of passes. He didn't have the same personnel around him. I've got that part, but still. So they perfected shelf life. Seattle obviously saw the shelf life with this guy, and essentially they fleeced Denver.
Yeah,
they fleeced him.
The exception of Bobby Wagner, I think Seattle has done an exceptional job.
Yeah, I mean, Bobby Wagner.
Wagner, I think, is one they missed on a little bit with the shelf life. But other than that, I think Seattle has done an incredible job with shelf life. Sherman, I think, was a different story. He, obviously wasn't pleasant in the final 2 years in Seattle, and they got rid of him ultimately. That wasn't necessarily a shelf life, but the rest of them were, and I thought they've done a great job overall.
Fletcher Cox retiring. Brandon Graham staying.
Yeah.
So Fletcher Cox retires. Jason Kelsey retires. So now, here's the issue I see there. It's really simple. 2 of the strongest, most powerful leaders in your locker room, in which it is alleged, only alleged, that there was a locker room issue last year. You're Nick Sirianni. You don't have those 2 people anymore.
No.
That is a problem.
Well, and the other problem you have, obviously, all the rumblings going around, obviously that leadership on the field, off the field, yes, but, the rumblings that, Big Dom was banned from the sidelines, he kept Nick Sirianni in check. You're the head coach of an NFL football team. You've got to keep yourself in check sometimes. Okay, that's not good.
First of all, your guy Greenlaw, I mean, it really comes down to your taunting.
Oh,
that poor guy.
Poor guy who put his hand in his face.
The poor guy. No, it was one of those. Remember what I said at the time? What I said at the time was, I'm sorry, you have no business getting involved in the game. You can't.
None.
And I understand the emotion. I've got that
absolutely.
part, but you also have no business.
None.
Getting involved.
Absolutely none.
All right. And then what does he need?
Exactly.
Why does Nick Sirianni need a guy to keep him in check?
Yeah, I don't get it. And that's where I'm looking at it, thinking, there was. And I know it was rumored that there were rumblings and there were issues. When you hear these things, it's clear as day there were issues. I don't know who they were, but it's clear as day there were issues. I think you take a very good guess to who they were, but it's clear as day there were problems in that locker room.
All right, the Bears. I know they have the first overall pick in the draft, and they have another one in the top 10. But it now looks like they're going to keep the team in Chicago and not move to the suburbs. Somebody is going to have to explain this to me.
Same with me.
All right. Why do I just... Kevin Warren. Well, I'll leave it at that. All right, so let's start with this.
Didn't even think of that part till you said it.
When Penn State played Northwestern, where did we stay? We stayed out at Willamette or something. We were out there. We were 5 miles. I remember we were like 5 miles from Arlington Park.
Okay.
5 miles from Arlington Park. And I've seen Arlington Park before. All right. In fact, I saw a good friend of yours. I guess said they were really tight. They Nick the Greek. What is that? What the no, wrong guy.
No.
So, Arlington Park, which I believe is that the last race that Secretariat ran was in Arlington Park?
Might have been.
Yeah,
it was in there.
Yeah. So Churchill Downs owns Arlington Park. Yeah. Well, they sold it to the Bears for $197.2 million. And I remember when we were out there and we went to dinner, we were talking about, geez, well, the Bears might build a stadium out here. I wonder what's going to mean for this area, this, so on and so forth. That's why they bought the property. Mm-hmm. Well, today, the Bears announced that they're going to build a stadium just south of the current Soldier Field. They'll continue to play in Soldier Field until they move into the new Dome Stadium. Now, the Bears have, believe it or not, Soldier Field is the smallest capacity of any stadium in the NFL, about 61.3 or 4. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah.
Well, you don't need more than that.
No.
You build it right with luxury suites, this, that, and the other thing.
Yeah. And Buffalo realizes that, too, and that's why their new stadium is
65.
a reduction.
Yep. Yeah. Highmark Stadium. So they want to build it south of Soldier Field, probably with the idea they're going to implode Soldier Field and just make it into a parking lot that leads transitions from the stadium to the museum to Grant Park.
Yeah.
Okay. I've done so many games in Chicago now. I know this. It's amazing. At this point in my life and my career, I've done so many games in so many different places. I can tell you where things are now.
Been to Chicago 2 times. Literally.
Oh, man. Because I've had extended stays. All right. And it's going to be a dome stadium. The people of Chicago are actually in favor of this because I think the Bears are going to put $2 billion of their own money into it. All right. But what do you do with Arlington Park?
What do you do with Arlington Park?
What do you do? You
sell it back?
I mean, first of all, interest rates are up here. All right? Okay, these aren't the interest rates of 5 years ago. Okay? Interest rates are now up here. That's why you have people delaying projects right now because the interest rates are essentially doubling the price. Okay. So they would renovate part of the Chicago's Lakefront Museum, more public space. It is presumed they'll knock down Soldier Field.
Yeah.
Although I believe Soldier Field is going to be needed, as will Wrigley Field for Northwestern football for 2 years. Now, this project they're not going to do this. It's not going to be done until like 2028 or something like that. But the Bears are going to contribute over $2 billion. Okay, now that's a big part of it. The fact that the team is putting money into it, and not like some, a lot. Mm-hmm. That means something. That's what for all you can criticize Jerry Jones all you want. Mm-hmm. That's his money in the stadium.
Absolutely,
that's his money.
Yeah.
Okay, you can criticize Robert Kraft all you want. That's his money in the stadium. You know, the only thing Kraft asked for from the state, the only thing, was $72 million for infrastructure. In other words, Route 1 is a 2-lane road. We'd like to see it be 8 lanes to get in and out. No. I mean, State House told him no. The guy's putting his own money into the stadium. You can't give him some money for the roads? Come on. Which they finally did. Yeah. This is after he threatened to move to Hartford.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, these guys are going to put $2 billion of their own money into it. Any franchise that puts a significant amount of coin into a project like that, I have a lot of respect for.
Absolutely.
Because, yes, there'll be some public money.
Yeah.
There's no question some public money will be in there, but it's some.
Yeah.
This is the majority of it. Like by a wide margin. It's going to be a dome stadium. And so it's actually great for the city. And because when I was the last couple times I was out there, they were fighting hard to keep the team, and the fans want to keep the team in Chicago as the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. And that's another aspect of this that I think, and that a lot of other teams do too. The biggest thing you've got to do, and there are teams that act like they do, but then don't. You got to listen to your fans. They're paying everything, quite a bit of what you do. So I think they listened to the fans, did everything they could to keep it in Chicago. But yeah, and it's back to your point. What exactly they're going to do with Arlington Park, I don't know. But they are listening to the fans, I think, with this one.
Now, there's some people that think it's a ploy to get Arlington to give them a better tax deal.
Yeah, maybe. Could be.
And that's... So I'll give you pluses and minuses of the amount of time I've been out there. Not living there, but the amount after a while. When you go out as many times as I go out.
Big Ten tournament for many years is out there.
Big Ten tournament, Northwestern football, other things, right? But other things too. All right, you go out there and go, all right.
Media days are always out there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So downtown Chicago, all right, Magnificent Mile, great. South side, a little rough. Okay. North side, a little more,
It's a madhouse on Madison for a reason for the Bulls.
But Lincoln Park, Park and everything like that. Okay. All right. That part of the city it's right on the lakefront. And there's something great about a downtown location. Now let's get to a suburban location. What does a suburban location bring with it? Well, first of all, you got highways going out there to Arlington, in the Arlington area. Okay. But you also, if you're going to get a plot of land like Arlington Park, what do you get with it? Lots of space for parking. Lots of space for parking. I mean, I've seen Hollywood Park because I've seen SoFi Stadium. I saw Hollywood Park before. Now SoFi Stadium, they leveled Hollywood Park. Well, guess what? SoFi Stadium is parking. Right? And it's going to be in conjunction with the new Clippers arena, which is going to be right there too. They'll share the lots the way they do in Philadelphia. So each one has pluses to it. But that's, I think it's interesting because I don't think this is a done deal. It's one is playing off the other. Because I don't see how you have $197 million or you paid Churchill Downs to get that. Like, I think we'll turn it into a housing development. Really? It's going to be housing. Really? Great. That's fabulous. I don't know. Not so sure. All right, let's get to basketball now. So Penn State finishes 9th. But because of tiebreakers, they're 11. Let's give Ohio State credit. They have lost once since Jake Diebler has taken over as the interim head coach. I find that remarkable, to be honest with you. It's not that they don't have talent. They have talent. Mm-hmm. But really? It's interesting how that's played out. Mm-hmm. Indiana.
Yeah.
Okay, they get Xavier Johnson back. Now, look, Xavier Johnson, for the first couple of months of the season, hurt as much as helped them.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay? That's why it was like when he went out of the lineup, they were not shedding tears. Like, okay, depth was hurt, but they weren't shedding tears. Then after the Penn State game, which is the last time he didn't play, he comes back in the lineup, and suddenly they're terrific again, and he's playing very well, and he is exponentially more of a help than a hindrance. After being a balance of 50-50 before. Now they're playing really well. And then let's give Khalil Ware credit. 0 for 5 at the free throw line. Finally hit one at the end. It's like, you got to be kidding me. Really? Like, Dick and I are watching this and they're going, like, he goes up there and, like, he totally bricks the first one. Mm-hmm. Like, okay.
Way off.
Right? And then the second one, doesn't even touch the rim. It's like, okay. Oh, goodness gracious. He's going to be interesting to see if he goes in the draft.
Yeah, uh-huh.
That's for another topic for another day, but that's going to be interesting because he does have an inside-outside game. And so Penn State will get Michigan. And, we know what Michigan did this season, and they've lost one of their key players. So their starting lineups had to change a little bit. Doug McDaniel, who played against Penn State at the Palestra, is not back playing full-time. He was suspended for 6 road games. Well, that's come and gone, so he's playing. Burnett's a good player. Reed is physical inside. Their depth is okay. Williams, Miles Dredd's old teammate from Gonzaga in D.C., the same Gonzaga that produced Olu Fashanu, the same Gonzaga that produced Caleb Williams. Okay. They all know each other. Has had a really good season. But, you start fresh now.
Sure.
Now, it doesn't matter what Michigan's record was before. I mean, this is their chance. It doesn't matter what Penn State's record was before. This is their chance. The winner of the game will then get Indiana. And then the winner of that game gets Nebraska. So Nebraska gets the double bye. Nebraska went into Ann Arbor yesterday and just pasted them 85-70. Indiana won 65-64, 64-63, whatever it was, over Michigan State. And Penn State last night, the second half they played. The first 5 minutes, Penn State played.
On that run.
First 5 minutes, Penn State played with pace, movement. Mm-hmm. Then the last 15 of the first half was played at Maryland's pace.
Yeah.
Because Maryland wants to slow the game down.
Absolutely.
They take long possessions. Young does a lot of individual breakdown off the dribble. Look, if I had his skills, I'd be breaking people down off the dribble too. Right? He's not a good shooter. I mean, that's one thing about Young. He is not a good shooter.
No, and I thought Baldwin did a great job last night forcing him into that.
Ace
was incredible last night.
Superior defensive player.
Incredible defender.
Right?
Probably be the defensive player of the year if Zach Edey wasn't there.
Well, he should be the defensive player of the year.
Yeah.
That's why there was the first question I asked Mike at the pregame show last night.
Good point.
I said, Mike, if you had a chance to sit down in front of the voting panel and explain to them why you think Ace Baldwin should be the defensive player of the year, what would you tell them? That was the first question of the pregame show last night.
Yeah.
And we'll see how it plays out. But he also had 17 points. He had 11 assists last night.
He had double-double. Yep.
So he had a double-double. Qudus Wahab had a double-double.
Yep.
And Wahab logged 30 minutes last night. Wahab's been logging some minutes down the stretch. And look, they had a week off last week. I mean, a bye week. But Mike gave them Sunday and Monday off. Tuesday they practiced, but it was a no-contact practice. Wednesday they were off again. Then they did, work Thursday, work Friday, work Saturday, shoot around. So, I mean, they had time leading in. But Mike gave him some time and told his team, they were on spring break last week, told his team to get sleep. He said, and he told me something that about Ace, for example. He said, if I tell Ace, get some sleep, Ace will go and sleep. Some guys won't. He will. Okay. And, and they looked fresher last night. The second half, the movement was tremendous.
Tremendous. Absolutely.
Again, you got to go back to a guy that is going to be pivotal in whatever they do, and that's Zach Hicks.
Yep.
And Hicks has played better defensively, but he's still struggling shooting the ball. When they were playing really well, he was shooting the ball beautifully, right? And he's just a tick off on the shot. There were a couple last night. Like one, he had to force up. That's always a tough one when the shot goes against you, and there's like one in the shot clock. You got to throw one up there, right? Which he did. But they need to get him to, at minimum, hit 4 out of 10. You know what I mean? Now, that's 40%. Okay, that's fine. If he does that, that's a big help. So he's going to be a pivotal player for them. Raquandis Mitchell, to his credit, there are times where where the ball and Ray Q do not travel at the same speed. But he had 16 at Iowa. Okay. He had, 14 last night? He played well coming off the bench. He also had that one 3-pointer that went round,
and then down.
Okay. Like, it was almost like when he made it, it was like instead of everybody being excited, it was like a sigh of relief. It's like, okay. DeMarco Dunn played well.
Yeah.
Nick Kern, as usual, and Puff Johnson has played really well down the stretch. You know that? He's a smart player, and he has played really well. Shooting threes, hitting his free throws, rebounding. Puff Johnson's been a big plus for them. And quietly, and I know people don't want to hear this because there's a group out there that's down on Leo O'Boyle. But Leo, down the stretch, Leo's played pretty well. He's hit a couple of shots. He doesn't take too many of them. He's been put in a tough spot where, hey, sometimes you got to play 5, because Lilly wasn't available again last night. He was the one no-go last night. But look, they played well. They won by 16. Maryland only 8 times this season, the whole season, out of 31 games, only 8 times has a team broken 70 points on them. And Penn State scored 85 last night. It's only 8 times that they've given up 70 points or better in a game. Penn State scored 85. Okay. So there you go. And now this is tournament week. And then after that, it is Selection Sunday. For the Lady Lions, according to what the latest bracketology I saw, and let's see if this is, let me just check and see. So I'll check ESPN bracketology. Women's basketball rankings. I don't want rankings. On the phone, it's different. I think you go to, I don't know if you can get bracketology on my phone, but they were like the second team out. All right. Now, Green Bay, the smaller conferences, see, it is a reverse. Like on the men's side, smaller conferences play their games, right, whatever, and the bigger conferences then go the second week. In women's basketball, the bigger conferences go the first week because of the men's tournaments, and the smaller conferences go this week. So one of them is to watch is Green Bay. I mean, watch what they do, which can have an effect potentially on the Lady Lions. But what really baffles me about the Lady Lions season is their net ranking. Their net ranking is really good. Okay, let me see. Women's basketball net ranking. Okay. Division One NCAA Women's Basketball net. Okay. Right now, where's Penn State in this thing? Penn State's 27th. How could you be 27th in the net ranking and be the second team out? I don't get that.
I don't either.
I'm completely baffled by that. Okay, Nebraska, which beat Iowa at home and then took Iowa to overtime yesterday, is the team in front of them at 26. They flipped spots. So in the net ranking, South Carolina's 1, UConn's 2, Texas 3, Stanford 4, Iowa's 5. So Iowa's 5 in it. Okay? Then Notre Dame, LSU, Ohio State. Then it's Juju Watkins and USC. Okay, Indiana's 14. Michigan State's 22. Nebraska's 26. Penn State's 27. How can you be 27 in the net? You're telling me that the net ranking is so important to what you do. And you're 27th, and you're telling me they're the second team out? Really? And what am I missing here?
Yeah.
Now, one thing I don't have in front of me with this chart is what their quad record is. That's what I don't have on this chart on the phone, is what the quad record is. But they don't have a single game against a non-Division I school. And 5-6 on the road, 2-2 neutral. And remember, one of those losses was to USC by a point, and Owosu didn't play. Oh, really? Interesting. I am baffled by this.
I am as well.
I mean, Arizona's supposedly in front of Penn State. Yeah. They're 34th.
Yeah.
They're 34th? Okay, where's Mississippi State? Mississippi State. They're 48th in the net. Okay, they're 48th. Really? Okay, well, I'm for them being in the tournament. That's fine. They have an excellent record, the whole thing. But Penn State's 27th in the women's basketball net. That makes no sense to me that they are the second team out. And then there's the Utah State women's basketball coach. Did you hear that press conference yesterday?
No.
Okay. Utah State, they have not been good for 2 years. So let's not pretend they've been really good. That's not the point here. She goes out, press conference, and the first question she gets, moving forward, what are some building blocks? Essentially, what are some of the building blocks you see, and what are some of the things you need to do in the off season to upgrade the program? She said, and she looks at me and says, "Well, it's going to be somebody else's problem. I'm no longer employed by Utah State." Like, oh, okay. And then she looked over and said, "Any other questions?"
That's going to be the last
okay, I think we got enough.
Yeah. Wow.
That is not what you wanted. That was, not good.
No, that's not.
I mean, you don't fire somebody before the press conference. I mean, come on.
No, my goodness, no.
You don't do that.
No.
Right? And then the next part, it's like Arkansas was playing Missouri or something like that in football, and they put out something in the press box during the game that when the clock hit 0, essentially, Brett Bielema was done. It's like, you don't do it that way.
That was like when Florida fired Ron Zook. They fired him before the season was over.
I know. Well, you know what?
So, basically, and it wasn't a case of you're fired, get out of here. It was a case of, yeah, you're fired. Let's coach the year. Good Lord. My goodness. I do not want somebody's job as an athletic director. That is a difficult job. But my goodness, I'm certain I can do better than some of these people.
Right. All right. So, yeah, we're in an interesting era. Now, everybody knows I have a hallmark of, when talking about these things, of being a very patient person. Everybody knows that. People may say I'm too patient, but I'm trying to use a blend of experience and what I've seen as to what I think should be done. And the idea now, in this current era, I've always said, hey, look, you should give any coach 5 to 6 years to build the program in their own image and then go from there. That way you know at the end of the 4 to 6 years, whatever time frame you want, what the program actually looks like. But in today's era with the transfer portal and NIL, I think you might see exponentially, as impatient as fans are, and I'm talking about the vocal fan, the fan that calls the talk show, the fan that posts on the message board, the fan that posts on X, the fan that posts on Instagram and so forth. That fan is usually extremely impatient, right? And in the current era, after a year or two, say things aren't progressing as quickly, you're going to get exponentially more impatient. Move on to the next person, whomever that is. I think you're going to have more impatience because of the current era. So take, for example, South Florida. Okay? South Florida took transfers this year, and they're having a terrific year. Now, they're, in the American, they're going to have to do something in the tournament. I don't know if they've got enough at-large to get there. They might. They very well might. They're a good team. But they're almost all transfers. Okay. And people are, look at that. Well, you're playing an American Conference schedule. Now, let's start with that. I mean, in other words, you have to have some common sense when you're going about this. I mean, do you think you can go into the Big 12 and do that? Really? Go into the Big East and do that? I mean, you might be able to, you'll win games. I'm not saying you won't win any games. You will win games, but not at the rate you're winning against an American Conference schedule. Remember, this is not the American Conference of the last 10 years. UConn is now in the Big East. Houston's in the Big 12. UCF's in the Big 12. Cincinnati's in the Big 12. Right? It's broken apart. That conference has been broken up.
Sure.
I mean, 2 of the number 1 seeds for the upcoming NCAA tournament were in your conference, with the emphasis being were. Okay? They're no longer there anymore. So everything's relative, and you have to be able to put it into perspective. Yes, can you bring in a group of transfers and do it just like John Calipari for years brought in groups of freshmen? And we debated that for a long time. Can you keep doing it over and over and over again? Duke has been, had one and dones. We talked about the one and dones thing forever. Now it's the transfer portal thing. Let's stay older, which I've talked about repeatedly. Staying older is important, right? Now, staying older, I want everybody to understand when I talk about staying older, so let's do this in a Penn State context. I am not talking about the entire team. That's absurd. But you can't just go out there. Let's go into a basketball battle with all freshmen.
All freshmen.
No,
yeah,
Penn State can't do that. Okay? But you have to have a balance of enough older players that then allows the younger players a chance to grow, and then the younger players grow into the older players while you're then getting some younger players in who eventually grow into. And you get into that cycle of people growing into being older. That's what I'm talking about, being older. And you mix in a couple of transfers, and it's got to be the right fit when you do it. So, but I think the patience of especially the vocal fan is thinner
for sure
in this era because of I can go into the transfer portal and I can get a couple of guys.
Yeah.
Right? Which I understand. I'm going to get a couple of guys. Now, the tough part is when you get them in the area for a year. Boy, you sure would like to get those couple of guys for a couple of years. All right? So let's take 2 teams. Wisconsin and Purdue. very selective in the transfer portal. Well, you mix in Illinois, too. Selective. Well, Illinois is not selective in the transfer portal. They went all in on transfers when they went to Baylor and got a couple guys. Danger's still there. Meyer, who had been the shooter, Meyer cared very much about his stats. Okay. But you go out, and Purdue needed to get somebody who was different. Edey is Edey, and, they've got backups, but, Edey is Edey. The other guys are pretty much the same kind of player all the way through. Gillis is a taller version of Lawyer. Heidi's a version of Gillis. Smith's a point guard. But Lance Jones they bring in. Wing. Athlete. Different than the other guys. Changed up the team a little bit. All right? A.J. Storr. Look, Wisconsin they're the same guy. Crowell is a lot like Wall. Hepburn is a lot like Klesmit. They're really like the same kind of guy until they get A.J. Storr. Now, Storr ran out of gas as the season went, because when you're like the only guy that's flying up and down the floor, because Wisconsin's not an athletic team. Okay? Storr made such a difference. And he kind of ran out of gas as the season went, but he was a different kind of player. He kind of changed the dynamic of their team because of how he played. And now let's go down a level. The head coach of Southern Illinois lost his job last week. I think they finished third in the Valley, right?
It was around there. Yeah.
It was because Drake and Indiana State were.
Yep.
And that was quite a game yesterday. Let's give Drake a lot of credit. You know how hard it is to lose an 18-point lead and then resurrect yourself and win?
Yeah, absolutely.
That's hard to do, because the emotions of it and the pressure of it, oh, geez, we squandered it, now we're losing. And then how do you react? Drake reacted beautifully. I hope Indiana State gets in the tournament, because that's a really good team. But the coach of Southern Illinois lost his job. How did he lose his job? Because Lance Jones transferred up to Purdue and DeMass transferred up to Illinois, where both of them were critical contributors to their team. He lost both guys. Exactly what was he supposed to do?
Yeah.
Explain to me what he was supposed to do. He loses one guy to Illinois, where the guy starts and is pivotal. He's the glue to that team. He and Hawkins are the glue. Shannon's the star, but those are the glue guys.
Sure.
Right? And made him better. And Jones is the kind of player Purdue desperately needed. This guy loses his job. What were they in Edwardsville? I'm sitting in Edwardsville right now. I'm looking around going, over here in the back, exactly who are you going to bring in? It's not his fault they left. What, came up short on the NIL at SIU Edwardsville? Come on. You're going to compete with Illinois when it comes to NIL money? Chance to move up? See, because it's not just the vocal group, and I'm not saying the vocal group's wrong. I'm saying, but it's a vocal group.
I was going to say, yeah.
I'm pointing out there's a vocal group. I am not saying they are right or wrong. That has nothing to do with right or wrong. But you know what I'm talking about. The people that are free to express their opinion, and normally it's not positive.
I was going to say 75% of the time it is,
it's usually not positive.
And that's a low number.
Right? Now, the question is going to be, how patient or impatient are athletic directors?
Yeah, and I think, that answer, to me, at least on the outside looking in, you don't know it.
It depends on the person.
But I think it's, exactly.
Okay, so let's take SIU.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, their athletic director, Kansas guy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on a second. I mean, I know nothing about this guy.
Right.
Okay, zero. I know nothing about him. I don't even know his name, for goodness sakes. Right? I just know who he had and who he lost. Okay. What are you expecting? We're going to go out and we're going to get a couple guys to transfer in to replace Damascus Jones? Well, it's kind of a tall order. They appear to be high major players having no problem competing at the high level in the Big Ten. Okay. So how patient or impatient are athletic directors? Now, part of this is, what's the greatest marketing tool you have?
Winning.
So far, so good. Now, unfortunately, I had to hold up a sign and you read it, but that was great.
But winning leads to the other green thing, money.
Right, exactly. And everybody wants to win. So let's take the current situation here. Okay. Because of upheaval in the program that has happened over the past 3.5 years. I mean, think about 3.5 years. Okay? So 4 years ago, I'm coming back on a plane from Indianapolis, and as the plane's landing, everybody finds out the NCAA tournament is canceled. That team is going to the NCAA tournament. They would be no worse than a 6 seed going in. I mean, they're in. Doesn't matter what they do in the Big Ten tournament. Right. They're in. Okay? Finally get there. All right. So that's in March of 2020. Going through a global pandemic. You walking around like you don't care. It's like incredible. And then suddenly, what? 7 months.
I would have been in big trouble if that happened, that's for sure.
7 months later, coaching change.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. 7.5 months later, all the three that verbally committed to Penn State all say no and leave. Don't sign.
Mm-hmm.
Interim coach, Jim Ferry. Okay. They go through pandemic season. Jim really does a really good job.
Exceptional job.
Right. But doesn't get the job. Okay. So then you hire Micah Shrewsbury. Shrews goes out, recruits 5 guys. Okay. They sign. Go through the first season. Great. Okay. First season's fine. The first season, you go through it. Then you get the next recruiting class, 3 guys. Sign. Okay. At the end of the season, an NCAA tournament run, he leaves. Now you hire Mike Rhodes. And all 3 guys that signed don't show up. You then have 2 members of the 5-person class leave. Evan Mahaffey goes to Ohio State, goes back home to Ohio. Kaba goes to South Bend, along with the 3 recruits. So now Mike is sitting there with a program that of the last 11 recruits that either verbally committed and are about to sign or did sign with Penn State, of the last 11, only 2 are here. Jameel Brown, Demetrius Lilly. Of those 11, only 2 of them are here because of the dramatic changes. Now, does anybody ever talk about this? No. You're just making excuses. No, I'm just giving you the facts as somebody who's been there and sees it on an everyday basis. And so Mike goes through this season. They win 15 games, 9 in the conference. Right? It is in so many ways where he's had to start a rebuild with the combination of portal. They had to do all portal this past year, plus he got Froggy. So, right, 10 guys, 9 portal, and 1 freshman. Right? Plus recruiting his own class. He already has 3 signed, and he has 1 verbal. And the verbal's going to sign, right, during the signing period next month. I mean, he'll sign. And you're at least trying to get a basis. Now, the difference is Mike's got a 7-year deal. He's got 6 more years to go, right? Now, he did walk in and say, look, I want Jason Lord's deal. Nobody gets a lifetime contract.
It's tough. It is tough. You have to negotiate pretty well. You got to know Dewey, Cheatham, and Howe, bring them in as your agents, and that works a lot well. That works well.
Else. No, they really, they set the tone.
They do.
Just in their name, they set the tone.
That's right.
But Pat wants to win, Kraft. I mean, he wants to win now. But he also understands the deal, and he knows what he's going through. So there's a level of patience there with him. He wants to win now in football, but he sees what James is doing, and and James is right there. He is right there. Spring football begins tomorrow. He's right there. And especially with the expansion of the 12-team playoff. Look, Penn State would have been in the darn thing, 5-6 times in a 12-team playoff under James? I mean, you are right there. And that's why sometimes you have these benchmarks that are a little unfair, not making the 4-team playoff. That's 4 out of 133. For goodness sakes, that's 3%, right? And you're sitting there in the top 5%. You're sitting in the top 5 or 6%. Since 2016. Right. It's pretty darn good football.
A lot of programs would love to be in that spot.
Oh, you'd love to be on the cusp of that. But we have these benchmarks that are judgment marks. That's why the patience part is going to be interesting. I think because of the way everything is today, transfer portal, things like that, there's going to be a lack of patience. It's going to grow. And you're not going to get 4 to 6 years. People are going to look at it and go, hey, come on, transfer portal, chop. Look what South Florida did in a year. I'll never forget Steve Lavin, whom I personally like. I like Steve, right? He did TV for years. That's why you run into him a lot. And he took over St. John's. Now, this is pre-portal, right? Pre-NIL, anything like that. And there had been some talk that, he was interested in this job. He goes into St. John's, and Mike Roberts was the coach, the former Kansas assistant. And the first year he goes in there, Roberts had recruited. Lavin took it over right when they were about ready to take off. And, they won big. Oh, look at Lavin. That's the guy they should have. And then, of course, after that, they went like this. All right. That's why I was told everybody, says, you got to give it some time to see what it looks like when it's there. And I'm not putting Steve down. I'm just giving you the facts as to what happened. But I think there's going to be a lack of that as time goes. All right. Off to Minneapolis. America's asking when they'll see your shining face again.
Not sure. America would hope that it's not this week, and Penn State plays through Saturday. Through Sunday.
Plus there's also the possibility that you've openly talked about in the hallways about coup d'etat. All right, so hey, talk to you. We'll have